Hi everyone, my name is Kalimabe and I'm a Senior Security Specialist at Vodacom, and I'm also the LGBTQ+ network lead for Vodacom South Africa. Today with me I've got George Mendes, who is the Chief Executive Officer for CBU Business and the Executive Sponsor for the LGBTQ+ network, joining us remotely. And then I've also got Njabulo Mashiko, who is the Vodacom HR Director. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks so much, Kali.
The reason we're here today is to discuss phase 2 of our #Pride@Work campaign, which is aimed at our purpose pillars towards ED&I, and also to challenge society and other corporate organizations to work the #Pride@Work movement with us as part of our Further Together campaign. This is for us to be able to create safe, inclusive spaces across all the workspaces and society at large. George, thank you once again for joining us remotely. The first question goes out to you. I'd like to find out from you, what are some of the things that you've learned and what are some of the things that you've done since the day you were appointed, or I guess raised your hand to be the executive sponsor for the LGBTQ+ network?
Thanks very much, Kelly. It's a great question, and thank you for asking it. Since I've taken over, which is a good few years now, as executive sponsor of the LGBT community, there's been a number of initiatives, some very challenging ones. Right now, what we're busy with, for example, is do we really need gender in our application forms when you're dealing with customers taking on services from Vodacom? So that will be removed. We've done a whole bunch of stuff inside the organization, one of them being genderless toilets, if you like, and bathroom facilities. So not only do we cater for people with disabilities, but gender neutral environment, and really embrace that. And there's a long list. Of course, we participate in a number of initiatives and programs inside the organization, externally as well. But I think probably the most important thing is, as an executive sponsor, is to live this and make sure that we don't just say stuff, talk is cheap, that we actually do things. And throughout the entire organization, it's now taken very seriously that diversity and inclusion is not something on the side or as an option or a tick box exercise, but something very much that we love. And it's flowing through the entire organization because it stems right down from senior people throughout the organization. So there's a number of initiatives, and I think I'm very proud of what we've been able to achieve so far.
I love how you touch on that, because it's always very important for us to have a top-down approach when it comes to matters such as that are important as this, especially when we're trying to drive safety, inclusion, and equity and diversity. Thank you very much for that, George. So the first question I have for you, Njabulo, is for you to just walk us on a journey of what do we mean as Vodacom when we say that we're an equal opportunity employer, and how do we put that into practice on a daily basis?
This refers to the policies that we have in place. As an employer, we believe in diversity and inclusion. And more specifically, we have policies to safeguard that we don't have any discrimination, whether it's based on gender, on race, sexual orientation. So in fact, over and above this network, we have our disability network, our women's forum, and we really try to make sure that we're quite conscious of making sure that we've got an organization where everybody feels that they're included and that they belong.
Thank you, Njabulo. Appreciate that feedback. George, the next question is for you. Could you please take us through how you've managed to take your role and leverage it across business and build relationships with different people across the different teams, and how that has provided value back into business?
So if I can add, to Njabulo's point, I think when you look at staff members as an example, when they add value to the process because of where they've come from, where their preferences are, where they live, upbringing, religion, all these kind of differences and nuances, we've actually seen that materialize in a good way. I'll give you a number of examples. We have Summer as a joint delivery team. When we go through the ideation of these initiatives that we want to launch for Summer, it's just amazing what you get, because it gets approached from all different angles. If we get someone in a particular high LSM suburb, they will come with a fiber proposition as an example. And someone more in the mass environment perhaps catches 2 public transports to work in the morning, has a very different approach. So when we look at the ideation and the reward structure and the incentives that we will give to our customers, all these factors get put in. And what do we land up with? We land up with a summer campaign that talks to fuel that you can get back as reward, school fees that can get paid, and those school fees ideas wouldn't come from a high LSM area, it would come from a lower LSM area as an example. Groceries, giving back groceries to customers just because the cost of living is through the roof. So all these initiatives then flow through to real commercial activities, real propositions, just because the internal staff complement being so diverse are able to put themselves in this actual position and walk in someone's shoes, so to speak, and that's how we get the best value internally, by having such a diverse culture. And it's wonderful because you don't know what you don't know, and it's always super interesting just to understand other people's backgrounds and preferences, and saying, well, there's a whole other world out there that I'm not familiar with, and let me embrace this knowledge that's coming to the table by all these diversities.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's very important, because when people feel belonging and feel that they can show up as themselves 100% every day, they're definitely bound to be able to add more value back into business. Thank you, George. Jabulo, you mentioned policies just now. Earlier this year, we launched a gender-neutral policy around maternity. Can you chat to us about that a bit?
Yeah, I'm still quite excited about it, especially seeing, I guess, the dads get involved more specifically. So our gender-neutral policy has shifted from having maternity leave to having parental leave. So which then means that all employees have the opportunity to be able to take time off to spend with their new children.
That's amazing. The one thing that I love about this for me is that we also cater to non-birthing parents. So like you mentioned with the dads, even if you're not necessarily the person who physically went through the pregnancy or whatever the case may be, you still stand an opportunity to be able to take time off and bond with your family, which is, I think, something that is absolutely amazing that we are able to provide as an employer, or that for me, I'm able to consume as someone who's gender neutral and might not necessarily qualify for maternity leave or paternity leave. So
exactly.
That's really awesome that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
And what are some of the measures that we've put in place during our recruitment or talent recruitment processes when people are joining the organization, especially if maybe someone is either disabled or coming from the LGBTQ+ community?
Yeah, I think we've had to really do a screening of all of our policies, not just the recruitment or attraction policies. I think across all of our existing policies, we still continue to check them. I think in terms of gender neutrality, we tend to partner a lot with you and your team to just really also read through the policies and also check our language. And I think that's a space where we've become more comfortable to be open to checking ourselves to make sure that this organization is a space where everybody can belong. Specifically on attraction and recruitment, we've had to make sure that our processes, all the way from how we I would say position ourselves out in the market from an employer branding point of view, the selection process itself, making sure that it's a fair process, we've got the right representation even in terms of people who are doing the selection, and that we don't have assessments that discriminate against people. And I think that's been a learning for us, as also we've been getting feedback in terms of how we're perceived and how candidates also experience the process.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I remember last year we went on a journey to take gender out of our policies, and now our gender is no longer referred to a he or a she. Anybody that reads the policy can read it and be able to feel included or feel belonging as part of that process. I think that was quite something exciting that we were involved in as a network as well, and to be able to provide that value back into business and make sure that the network isn't just for employees, but we're also able to find ways to continuously collaborate with business to look at how we can do things a bit better. George, to Njabulo's point, what would you say is the relationship between equity, diversity, and inclusion when or with in relation to excellence and delivery?
So my wish and my desire, to be brutally honest, my plea, if I can put it that way, is for other executives inside this organization, ours of course, and other organizations. We've started the movement with the hashtag Pride at Work, and really making sure that we create safe spaces for inclusion and diversity to take place in exactly that, in a safe way, and be participative and all-encompassing. We're challenging other organizations and other executives to do exactly the same. As a top employer, we think we have a responsibility to ensure that this takes place in our organization, but in the workforce at large. And so that would really be the challenge. My personal opinion would be that it's a very serious topic, but dealt with in a light-hearted manner to ensure that we can all coexist. It doesn't have to feel that difficult. I think far too often we create this space in our minds that it's complicated and how we're going to deal with stuff that we don't know. It's okay to not know what you don't know. I started in exactly the same boat and I had to learn as I go along. The request is simply to have an open mind. Everyone can coexist. There are differences amongst us, but the safe environment, the safe space for the future of a better, together, inclusive environment can only be a dream that comes true if we all embrace this. So it's cool to not know what you don't know, just embrace it, open-mindedness, and take on the challenge of saying it's okay to all be different. And I think as executives in particular, it really flows down from the top because it allows the organization to flourish in exactly that way. So that would be the plea and the ask and the challenge for everybody inside Vodacom and in other organizations as well.
Yeah, no, that's very true, especially driving to your point earlier about how important it is for people to feel belonging and how business can derive value from that. Jabulo, the last question is, what advice do you have for other HR directors, whether who are running global organizations in South Africa or who are running an organization in South Africa, where when you look at the equity, diversity and inclusion portfolio, or just HR from end to end, you also sort of face challenges around, culture, tradition, and any other sort of like binary systems. So what advice would you have for them, and how or where to even start to try and implement changes in the organization towards driving inclusion?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think one is as HR practitioners or people who get to lead the people agenda, we always have to stay educating ourselves. So this year I'm 20 years in HR, but I really think last year was the first time I really invested time in learning about allyship. I've always considered myself to be an ally. And I think sometimes because I'm black, female, I've been on excos when I was young, I know what it feels like maybe to have an ageist experience or a sexist experience. But I think going through that journey of learning what it means to be an ally and maybe the privilege and the power that I have in different instances. Sometimes it's a power dynamic because I'm on exco, I'm senior, or I'm able in different ways that other people are not. I think that consciousness is very important to keep top of mind because I think it makes it more authentic in how you lead the people agenda and the openness to always learning. Also for me, for the practitioners, but also in the organization, having constant capability training. So for me, what we also did last year around withstander training was quite significant because it's literally teaching people being a bystander versus being a withstander and how much power you have actually to be able to contribute. And anybody can do something when they see discrimination, when they see somebody who has a different power dynamic to what they have. So I think that's very important. And then lastly, I'd probably highlight, I think, there's always people around us who want to get involved. And one of the highlights for me in my Vodacom journey has just been the level of ownership by all the network leaders. So you don't have to have all the answers as the HR director or the HR leader, but you need to engage the right people. So for me, I found that our people with disabilities in the organization, they run the network. In fact, all the networks are run by employees who actually have lived in real experiences where they have the high energy and the interest. And I think it's just about being open. And I think our role is more to put the guardrails, sometimes in terms of whether it's the frameworks or the policies or the guidelines, and sometimes to elevate the conversation because we've got the seat at the table or we can influence policies. And it's really a partnership. And I think that's how everybody needs to look at it.
No, definitely. Thank you. I love how you a lot reference to collaboration, and you also spoke a lot towards how you take up space, because I mean, when you look at the withstand that training, it helps you to reflect a lot on how you could be affecting someone without actually necessarily noticing. And when you do then do that self-reflection, I think you're able to come back into the space and take up space in the best way possible, because there is no right or wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's just what's best moving forward. Thank you, Njabulo. As always, it's been a pleasure being able to find time to chat with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. We really appreciate you making time to sit and talk to us about this important agenda. For me, as an employee of Vodacom, or could have been an employee of any other organization, and as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, this means a lot, because we are moving towards a direction of not being much of like a tick box exercise, and actually implementing from the different policies and I guess employee benefits that we have, and also going towards the direction of being consistent and persistent in terms of being able to thrive when it comes to implementing resources for belonging, diversity and inclusion, and being able to even be one of the employers who are recognized for this as part of us winning the SAWE Gold status. This really is an important message and an important journey, and I hope that for someone probably sitting in HR, either as Njabulo or as George Mendes, you're able to pick up something from this conversation, and it can inspire you to go and take up space in the most valuable way in your organization by using the responsibility and the power that comes with your role to implement change in the organization and make sure that everybody is treated equally and feels belonging and feels safe enough to be able to deliver on the mandate that they're hired to within the organization. Thank you. Chat to you soon.